June 7th, 2012, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, TD Garden, Boston, Massachusetts. Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Boston up 3-2 against the Miami Heat. This is one of the most important games in NBA history. A trip to the finals on the line for one team, a chance to fight another day for the other team. However, for one player in particular, this game meant more than just that. This is a game that would define his legacy. It could either save his legacy and allow him to keep building on it, or it could cut the line and send his legacy falling to the ground. June 7th, 2012 is when LeBron James' legacy was actually on the line. But before we get into today's video, I've noticed that about 60.5% of you guys that watch my videos happen to not be subscribed. So you happen to fall into that 60.5%, or you just happen to be new and like what you see. Feel free to like, subscribe, hit notification bell to be notified whenever I release a video. I make videos to take elements from film essays and apply them to basketball. I also make videos covering the NBA draft and high school basketball as well. So if any of those things are of an interest to you, this is the channel for you. Let's try to get 100 likes on this video so YouTube will recommend it to others. But with that being said, let's get right into the video. To understand what made that legacy game so important, we must look at LeBron James' career up to the day of June 7th of 2012. LeBron James is arguably the greatest draft prospect ever and is by far the most publicized draft prospect of the 21st century. He received the most hype ever seen from a high school prospect. Some would say too much hype for a high school prospect. He was on the Sports Illustrated cover at the age of 16. He was one of the most popular basketball players in the country despite not even playing in the NBA yet. And we have seen hype before, and we have seen those who have failed to live up to the hype and the expectations. And to be fair, it's completely understandable. It's a lot of pressure to put on somebody that young, and not everyone is built to handle that kind of pressure, which is again okay. It's more on the part of the media than it is on the player for putting that kind of pressure on them that young. However, we also have seen those live up to the hype and live up to the expectations, and they just handle the pressure better. And that's also okay, because some kids are more equipped to handle pressure. LeBron James is the biggest example of someone who lived up to the hype. In fact, you could argue he even exceeded the hype. LeBron James would be the first overall pick in the 2003 NBA draft by the Cleveland Cavaliers, his hometown team. And through the first 7 seasons of his career with the Cleveland Cavaliers, LeBron James was simply put incredible. He averaged 27.8 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, and 7 assists per game on a 56.22 shooting percentage. He made 6 All-Star teams, he won 2 MVPs, made 4 All-NBA first teams, 2 All-NBA second teams, 2 first-team All-Defensive selections, 1 scoring title, and led the Cavs to 66 and 61 wins in seasons in back-to-back years. A player well on pace to be one of the best ever, to say the least, and quite literally a Hall of Fame resume by the time he was 25 years old. However, one thing obviously missing from his resume was championships, which is something he would have to win not only once but multiple times if he wanted to be in the greatest of all time conversation down the line. He had only made the finals once in his career up to that point, and that was with the Cavs in 2007. In 2008, the Cavs would lose to Boston in the second round in 7 games, which wasn't the end of the world as Boston was the title favorite that year, and losing to the eventual world champions in 7 games is not the worst thing in the world. In 2009, the Cavs would lose to Orlando in the Eastern Conference Finals in 6 games. However, LeBron was awesome in that series, averaging 39 points a game, 8 rebounds a game, and 8 assists per game. So again, while he hadn't made it to the finals, it wasn't like he wasn't putting up a fight. However, in 2010, the Cavs would lose to Boston again in the second round, this time in 6 games, This time, however, LeBron received valid criticism, as despite having a 2-1 series lead, he would average this 21 points game along with 11 rebounds game and 8 assists per game on 34, 15, 74 shooting splits in 3 straight losses in that series following them going up 2-1. And an exit like that would set the stage for one of the most infamous moments in his career. Okay, I'm not going to waste your time. Most of you know what happened. LeBron James went and joined the Miami Heat, announcing it on national TV to the world. A lot of people got mad at the decision because he formed a super team with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. He said that they were going to win 7 rings, and that was a bold proclamation. And then he goes out, they make it to the finals that year, and then he has one of the worst playoff performances we have ever seen from a superstar in any sport. He looked passive. There were times that he didn't even look like one of the 5 best players on the court. He had 8 points in a finals game in his prime. It was one of the worst displays we have ever seen from a superstar player, and that would lead us into the very next season. So that led to the 2011-2012 season, which of course the lockout had that season, and it didn't start until December. And ironically enough, the NBA scheduled the first game of the season for the Miami Heat to be in Dallas on Christmas against the Mavericks on ring ceremony night. That had to have hurt. And it had to have for LeBron, because LeBron, he underperformed so low to his standards. And usually that could be demoralizing for most players. For LeBron, he just went out that night and they destroyed the Mavericks, as he had 37 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists on 57.9 shooting from the field. And that was the start of what would become probably his least known MVP season of his 4 MVPs that he won, especially considering the MVP season that would follow. But he was really good in the season, winning MVP. But, you know, the MVPs were fine. We've seen that before from him. He still had to win a title, and he had to go through the playoffs once again to prove that. They make it past the first round pretty easily. They make it past the second round. Indiana somewhat puts up a fight, I would say. But at the same time, you know, in the end, they would end up winning that series. Despite going down 2-1 at one point, they would win the next 3 straight games, where LeBron was playing out of his mind. The most noticeable game from the Indiana series was game number 4, where he had 40 points, 18 rebounds, and 9 assists. And this led us to the conference finals, where he faced a familiar foe in the Boston Celtics. Boston has been a thorn in LeBron's side for the majority of his career up to this point. Minus that one year in Miami, he really has not been able to beat this team. And all of a sudden, they split the series at 2 games apiece. Boston wins their games in Boston, Miami wins their games in Miami, not in that order. Miami had home court advantage in the playoffs, obviously. And then heading back to Miami for Game 5, Boston wins. And they're up 3-2, heading back to Boston. TD Garden's one of the hardest places to play in. In Boston, that has momentum. When they have momentum, TD Garden becomes one of the hardest places to play in the NBA, especially during the playoffs. And for LeBron, this was gigantic. He already was coming off last season, where he ended the season with a situation where he had one of the worst superstar performances we've seen in a championship series of any athlete. Now he's in a situation where there's a chance he's going home before he even has a chance to make it to the finals. Against a team that's been a thorn in his side, he's never been able to beat minus 1 year. And this would have a massive impact on his legacy, because if he said all these things about how he's going to win 7 rings and do all of these things, and then all of a sudden, he has one of the most embarrassing moments in playoff history of any sport from a superstar, and follows it up with not even making it to the finals the next year, that would invalidate him from any greatest of all time conversation. And this is why it will become such a legacy game for LeBron. and this is how he responded. This has become one of the most iconic photos, not only in basketball history, but in sports history. It's been used to signify focus and preparing for dominance, and for good reason, because what LeBron James was about to do required a lot of focus, and it was beyond dominant. In the first quarter of the game, LeBron James had 14 points, 3 rebounds, and 1 assist. He was 6 for 7 for the field, which translates to 85.7% from the field. And he was 1 for 1 from 3, which basic math tells you that's 100% from 3. And he was 100% from the line, and he only took 1 free throw attempt. So again, math tells you that's 100%. And that was a very good first quarter. But it gets even better than that. In the second quarter, LeBron James once again played all 12 minutes as he did in the first quarter, and he had 16 points, 2 rebounds, and 1 assist. He shot 6 for 7 from the field again, didn't make any 3-pointers this quarter, and was 4 for 8 from the line. So you would like to see the free throw percentage go up, but that really didn't matter. It wouldn't matter for 2 reasons. First of all, because despite missing those 4 free throws, he looked absolutely dominant in the first half. And secondly, when you look at the box score, he had 30 points in the first half on 85.7 shooting from the field, along with 5 rebounds and 2 assists. Add on top of this the fact that he was one of only 2 players in the entire game to have double-digit scoring at halftime, but also the only player on his team to score more than 6 points in the first half. And that goes to show you how dominant of a first half he did, and it truly would become something that was demoralizing for Boston. LeBron James was solid in the second half. He wasn't great, but to finish it off, LeBron James would finish this game with 45 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists on a 75.1 true shooting percentage. He led the Miami Heat in points, he led the game in points, he led the Miami Heat in rebounds, as well as the entire game in rebounds, and he led the Miami Heat in assists. He wouldn't lead the whole game in assists, Rajon Rondo did, as he did have 10 assists in this game. But overall, it was just a very dominant performance. Something that not only would signify things to come for LeBron against the Boston Celtics, but also what would start a trend in his career and what makes him one of the greatest of all time, and arguably might be the greatest of all time. It all started with this specific game. LeBron James would not only win the conference finals in 7 games, but he would also go on to win the NBA finals that year. Followed that up with one of the greatest seasons by a single player in NBA history. Then would go on to return to Cleveland, help them come back from a 3-1 deficit, not only to break the curse of the Cleveland championship, but also to beat one of the greatest regular seasons of all time in the NBA Finals in 2016. And then he would go on to the Los Angeles Lakers. He would lead the league in assists, and then he would win another NBA title, cementing himself as at least one of the 2 greatest players of all time. And it all started at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on June 7th of 2012 at TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts. But that is the end of this video. If you've made it to this point, thank you so much. Again, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, do all those things, be a big help to me. Let me know what you think about this game. Are you old enough to remember this game? I was old enough. I was around 10 years old when this game happened. I was 10 turning 11 actually, but you know, I wasn't as in-depth with basketball, or even close to as in-depth with basketball as I am now. So looking back on this game, it's just truly incredible to see. But let me know your thoughts about this game in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts on LeBron in general. If you have more time, go watch another video. I have over 390 videos on this channel, so I'm willing to bet you'll find something else that you would like. But yeah, I would really appreciate that. But with that being said, have a nice day.